Welcome to the Gen Z Market Podcast, where we have marketing conversations and everything in between. Here we talk about marketing, branding, e commerce, and the power of integrated marketing communication. I'm your host, Jamia Umali, a strategist passionate and specializing in branding and marketing for e commerce. A new year means a new season, and I'm excited to get back into the swing of things again. So, in this episode, let's talk about what it means to define your personal brand and how it affects your work and career trajectory. By the end of this episode, you should be inspired to think about your own personal brand and have some prompts that will help you reflect as to what that is for you. Before we get to it, don't forget to support the show by following the podcast to get notified on the latest uploads. Let's start off this season with a topic that we can all relate to, our personal brand. So, this is something that I've been reflective of in the past year or so, and I've already somewhat defined my personal brand through the years. And ever since I did, I've had a clearer vision on my career path. I want to give a quick shout out to Karma Marketing for inspiring me to come up with this episode. So they had this post last month about personal branding, and it made me think that this is something relevant to us professionals. But first, what exactly is personal branding? It has the same principle as we have for branding for businesses, but of course, personal rather than for a product or service. If you've listened to some of our previous episodes on branding, you may remember how we consistently said that branding is about establishing your identity. We do this through identifying a purpose as well as values, vision, and mission, among others. Like how branding influences business decisions, personal branding affects career ones. So, how do you communicate your skills and goals through your resume or with your managers, right? Like, what are your goals and what would you do to get there? Where do we start when it comes to defining our branding? Let me go back to what we've said before in previous episodes about branding and what the one thing that doesn't change is when it comes to branding your purpose. So, with brands, your values, goals, vision, and mission may change through the years, but purpose is the one thing that doesn't change. But when it comes to your purpose or even your brand story, how do you figure that out for yourself? Well, I would say it's the same way you do it for businesses. Let me walk you through how I defined my purpose for personal branding. If you know me personally, or you may have listened to the episode in which I talked about my story, then you'd know. For this episode, I'll be sharing a more condensed version of that. So, I identified my purpose by going back to what prompted me to choose this career path in the first place. I knew when I was in grade school that I wanted to be a writer and work at the Tween magazine, which is why I took up communication. I knew when I took up advertising as an elective in high school that working in that industry inspired strategic creative thinking that I enjoyed. I knew when I participated with a few classmates at an inter-school competition called Teampreneur Challenge that marketing sparked joy for me. And when we won the Best Innovation Award, that also helped the small business owner that we partnered with. I knew that helping someone succeed through strategic creativity was for me. That led me to work in marketing, and I've made choices in college and in the previous years that are on track of that. Then I focused on the e-commerce industry and got my master's in integrated marketing communication. You can tell even then that I already had an idea of my goals and what my passion is. And early in my career, I can tell you that I was one of those people who thought that my work should be my passion and that it determined my worth and the sense of fulfillment that I had. However, I'm now in a more mentally healthier and mature mindset to understand that this isn't the case. My goals drove me rather than my purpose. Passion isn't enough without the right purpose. So, what is my purpose? I look back at why I wanted to write and work in a magazine in the first place. I look back at the Teenpreneur Challenge. It was a year ago or so when I realized that my purpose was this: to give back to a world that has given good things to me. I wanted to write because it was a form of expression that made a difference to readers. I wanted to be in marketing to help businesses and customers in their lives. We have now the first element of personal branding. Now, what are my values and identity based on that? You could say that the podcast branding is an extension of that. In case you missed it, I talked about it in season 2, episode 4, which was really just about the podcast rebranding. Essentially, my personal values are being intentional, impactful, and innovative. The identity that I have is very mindful, inclusive, and curious, among others. And my goals, as with my latest career alignment, is working in branding and marketing for e-commerce. Being an educator, as you can tell with the podcast and my speaking engagements, is another goal. My method or niche is strategic creative thinking, which is why I work as a senior brand strategist. All of these were influenced by collective moments in my past. If I would put my personal branding into a statement, it would be this: I want to make meaningful impact to society through strategic creative creativity in working with brands and peers. Now that we have defined what personal branding is and how I did it, our question is, how can you do it for yourself? Of course, we all have different industries, career trajectories, values, and goals. For instance, some of you may prefer succeeding in the corporate world, while I know that that isn't the track for me, and I prefer creative agencies that help small or medium businesses. Defining your brand takes time and thoughtfulness. I would recommend, like what we do for businesses, that you have somewhat of a discovery call for yourself. This time, it's more of being reflective of yourself. So, what inspires you to get up and work? What sparks joy for you at work? Where do you see yourself being in the next 5 or 10 years? What are your goals? How can you get there? So, these questions are a good starting point as you reflect and determine what your personal brand is. Of course, there may be questions and realizations along the way. And as we said, your goals and values may change, but your purpose won't. Once you determine your personal brand, it's easier for you to set out your goals and career trajectory. And when you have consistent branding, as we know, this influences the perception of others about us. After all, a good brand is well defined, consistent, and eventually, people around you can define what your brand is without you telling them. And that's a wrap on our episode on personal branding. Do you need help in figuring out what your personal branding is? So let's talk it out. Reach out to me at the Gen Z Marketer Podcast on Facebook, at Gen Z MKT on Instagram, so that we can have a meaningful discussion on your personal branding. Think of it as a discovery call or mentoring session free of charge. Of course, my inbox is also open for episode suggestions and collaborations. Until the next episode, marketers.